All right, in this video, we're going to do a really quick introduction to CSS flex properties. Flex properties are used to position items. They're incredibly useful. We use them to create grids, create columns, all kinds of stuff. You'll be learning all these flex properties in other ways, but this video is just going to put down some really basic knowledge that you need to before you can use those other resources. So, really quickly, I've got a body tag, and then I have 3 empty div elements in it, and basically all I've done is created 3 squares. Now, when we are using flex, the most important thing to understand is we have a flex container, and that element contains what are called flex boxes. So to create a flex container, I'm going to give an element display, and I'm going to set display to flex, okay? So you see immediately what happens is instead of going down the page, by default our HTML elements go down the page like this, they just stack on top of each other. Once I give an element display flex, that element is now a flex container, and all of the elements immediately inside it, so these 3 divs become flex boxes. And flex boxes behave differently than other kinds of elements. So by default, flex boxes get positioned across like this, okay? Now, the other things that we really need to understand about flex is flex boxes or flex containers have 2 axes. They have what's called a main axis and what's called a cross axis, okay? And they also, flex containers also have a flex direction, okay? So by default, flex direction is set to row, and that means that the flex boxes are going to go across the page like this. So when my flex direction is row, which is the default, this side to side is my main axis, and this up and down is called my cross axis, okay? And you'll need to understand main and cross axis as you start to learn different flex properties. For example, there's a way to spread these guys out across my main axis, but I need to understand which is my main axis and which is my cross axis before I can do that. Now, if I set my flex direction to column, my flex boxes are going to go back to this vertical layout. Now, when my flex direction is column, this is my main axis now, and this side to side is my cross axis. So it's a little bit confusing, but it'll become easier as you start working with this. Okay. So again, to kind of summarize, when I set display flex on an element, the elements immediately inside that element become flex boxes and behave differently. By default, my flex direction is row, which means that my main axis is this way, my cross axis is vertical. If I set my flex direction to column, my main axis is now vertical, my cross axis is horizontal. All right, I'm going to pause the video and talk just a little bit more. Okay, so what I've done is instead of having 3 divs inside my body, I now have a paragraph, an H2 element, and a UL. And what I wanted to show you is that when I make the body now a flex container, these 3 elements will still become flex boxes. So it's any elements that are immediately inside the body. So we'll set display flex here, and we'll see that these 3 are now acting as flex boxes, and they're being positioned side by side across the screen. My LIs are not acting as flex boxes, they're acting normally because it's only the elements that are immediately inside my flex container that act as flex boxes. All right, so that's everything you need to know to get started. We'll do some later videos that kind of show how to use flex to implement different layouts and to really get going.